It was my first night shift at Walmart, and I was feeling a mix of excitement and dread. The store, usually bustling with shoppers, felt eerily empty and silent as the clock struck midnight. I was assigned to stock shelves in the home goods section, a task that seemed simple enough. Little did I know, that night would haunt me forever. The first couple of hours were uneventful. I moved up and down the aisles, arranging pillows, blankets, and various household items. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, and the hum of the air conditioning was the only sound breaking the silence. It was around 2 a.m. when I started to notice something strange. I felt like I was being watched. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia. The combination of the late hour and the quiet store was playing tricks on my mind, I told myself. But then I saw a shadowy figure standing at the end of the aisle. My heart skipped a beat. I blinked, and the figure was gone. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. I continued stalking the shelves, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Every now and then, I caught glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, but whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. I started to feel a creeping sense of unease. My hands trembled slightly as I placed items on the shelves. Around 3 a.m., I heard a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. It sounded like my name. Jake, the voice was faint, almost as if it was carried by the wind. I froze, straining to hear more. The store was dead silent again. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel a cold sweat forming on my forehead. I decided to take a break and head to the employee lounge. As I walked through the empty aisles, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. The whispering started again, this time more insistent. Jake. Help me, I quickened my pace, almost running to the lounge. I slammed the door behind me and took deep breaths, trying to calm myself. In the lounge, I found Maria, one of my coworkers. She was sitting with a cup of coffee, looking tired but composed. I hesitated, not wanting to sound crazy, but finally I blurted out, "Maria, have you ever heard strange things during the night shift?" She looked at me with a serious expression. "You mean the whispers and the shadows?" she asked. I nodded, relief flooding through me. At least I wasn't imagining things. Maria sighed and took a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, it's a common occurrence. Most of us have experienced it at some point. The store is old, and there are rumors about it being haunted." "Haunted," I repeated, my voice shaky. Maria nodded. "There's a story about a former employee who went missing years ago. They say his spirit roams the store at night, trying to reach out to the living. Some people believe he met a tragic end right here, and his soul never found peace." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What should I do?" I asked, feeling desperate. Maria shrugged. "Most of us just try to ignore it. There's not much else you can do. It's not like you can fight a ghost." I spent the rest of my break in the lounge, dreading the moment I would have to go back out there. When I finally did, the store felt even more oppressive. The whispers returned, growing louder and more frantic. "Jake, help me." I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to find the source of the voice. Maybe if I confronted it, it would stop. I walked through the aisles, following the sound. It led me to the electronics section, an area I hadn't been assigned to that night. The whispers grew louder as I approached a display of old, dusty televisions. "Jake, help me," the voice was coming from one of the TVs. I felt a surge of fear and curiosity. I reached out and turned on the TV. Static filled the screen, and for a moment nothing happened. Then, the static cleared, and I saw a face. It was a young man, pale and gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes. His mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but I knew what he was saying. "Help me." I stumbled back, my heart racing. The face on the screen seemed to follow me, his eyes pleading. I wanted to run, but I was rooted to the spot. The young man reached out, his hand pressing against the screen, as if trying to break through. Suddenly, the screen went black. The TV turned off on its own. The store was silent once more. I stood there, trembling, not sure what to do. I felt a presence behind me and spun around. There was nothing there. I couldn't stay in the store any longer. I ran to the exit, my footsteps echoing through the empty aisles. I didn't stop until I was outside, breathing in the cool night air. I vowed never to work the night shift again. The next day, I told my manager I couldn't do it. I didn't give a detailed explanation, just said it wasn't for me. He didn't seem surprised. It's not for everyone, he said. To this day, I still hear those whispers in my dreams. Jake, help me. I don't know if the spirit of that young man will ever find peace, but I hope he does. As for me, I've learned to stay away from Walmart after dark. Walmart had always been a part of my life. I worked there part-time during high school and continued after graduation. It was an easy job and the pay was decent. But something happened a few months ago that made me reconsider my long-term plans with the company. I was scheduled for the evening shift, which typically ended around midnight. On this particular night, the store was unusually quiet. I was assigned to stock the clearance aisle, which was located at the back of the store, far from the main entrance and customer traffic. I had been working for a couple of hours when I noticed an aisle I had never seen before. It was odd because I thought I knew the layout of the store like the back of my hand. This aisle was dimly lit, with shelves filled with old, dusty products. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Curiosity got the better of me, and I walked down the aisle, examining the items. There were outdated electronics, expired food products, and strange trinkets that didn't belong in any modern store. The air felt colder here, and I shivered as I moved further down. At the end of the aisle I saw a door. It was old and wooden, with peeling paint and a rusted handle. The sign above it read employees only, but it didn't look like any part of the store I had ever been to. I hesitated, but something compelled me to open it. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow hallway. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever, and the further I went, the darker it became. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight to see where I was going. As I walked, I started to hear noises. It was faint at first, like distant whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unsettling. The whispers grew louder, and I quickened my pace, hoping to find the end of the hallway soon. Finally, I reached another door. This one was metal, with a small window at eye level. I peered through the window and saw a room filled with old furniture, broken shelves, and other discarded items. It looked like a storage room that had been abandoned for years. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was even colder than the hallway, and a sense of dread washed over me. I felt like I was intruding on something I wasn't supposed to see. The whispers were louder now, filling the room with an eerie presence. I saw a figure in the corner of the room. It was a woman, her back turned to me. She was wearing an old-fashioned dress, and her hair was disheveled. I called out to her, but she didn't respond. I took a step closer, and she slowly turned around. Her face was pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through me. She opened her mouth, and a chilling wail escaped her lips. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard, a mix of pain and despair. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The woman started to move toward me, her movements slow and deliberate. I turned and ran, desperate to get out of the room. The whispers followed me, growing louder and more frantic. I reached the hallway and sprinted back the way I had come, not daring to look back. When I finally emerged from the aisle, I was out of breath and trembling. The store was quiet again, and everything seemed normal. I looked back at the aisle, but it was gone. There was no trace of the dimly lit aisle or the door I had entered. I didn't tell anyone about what happened that night. I knew they wouldn't believe me. but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with that part of the store. I avoided the clearance aisle from then on, and I never worked the evening shift again. A few weeks later, I quit my job at Walmart. The experience had left me shaken, and I couldn't bring myself to stay in that store any longer. I've moved on with my life, but the memory of that night still haunts me. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had stayed in that room a little longer, or if I had confronted the woman. But some things are better left unexplored. The abandoned aisle and the ghostly woman remain a mystery, one that I have no desire to solve. I've learned to stay away from places that don't belong in the normal world, and I've found peace in knowing that some doors are best left unopened. I started working at Walmart during the summer after my freshman year of college. It was supposed to be a temporary job, just something to keep me busy and help pay for textbooks. I never expected anything unusual to happen. But that changed one night on aisle 13. It was a typical Friday evening, and the store was busy with last-minute shoppers. I was assigned to restock the canned goods on aisle 13, which was located near the center of the store. The work was monotonous, but I didn't mind. It gave me time to think and listen to music on my earbuds. Around 10 p.m., the store started to quiet down. The crowds thinned, and the aisles were mostly empty. I was stacking cans of soup when I heard a strange noise. It was a soft humming, like someone singing a lullaby. I took out my earbuds and listened, but the sound stopped. I shrugged it off and went back to work. A few minutes later, I heard it again. This time it was louder and clearer. The melody was haunting, and it sent chills down my spine. I looked around, but there was no one else in the aisle. I decided to investigate. I walked up and down the aisle, trying to find the source of the humming. It seemed to be coming from the far end, near the back of the store. As I approached, the humming grew louder, and I felt a sense of unease. At the end of the aisle, I saw a little girl. She was standing next to the shelves, her back turned to me. She was wearing a white dress, and her long hair hung down her back. She was the one humming the lullaby. "Hey, are you okay?" I called out to her. She didn't respond. I took a step closer, and she stopped humming. The silence was deafening. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt a sense of dread. The girl slowly turned around. Her face was pale and expressionless, with dark circles under her eyes. She stared at me with an intensity that made me shiver. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't say anything. Instead, she pointed to the shelf next to her. I looked over and saw an old, dusty doll sitting on the shelf. It looked out of place, like it had been there for years. The doll's eyes seemed to follow me as I moved. "Is this your doll?" I asked. The girl nodded slowly. "Do you want me to get it for you?" She nodded again. I reached out and picked up the doll. It was cold to the touch, and I felt a sudden surge of fear. As I handed the doll to the girl, she smiled. It was a chilling smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. She took the doll and held it close. "Thank you," she said in a soft, almost whispery voice. Then, she turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner of the aisle. I stood there, feeling a mix of confusion and fear. Something about the encounter didn't feel right. I decided to follow her, to make sure she was okay. I walked to the end of the aisle and looked around the corner, but she was gone. I searched the surrounding aisles, but there was no sign of her. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. I felt a cold breeze and shivered. I couldn't explain what had just happened, but I knew it wasn't normal. I went back to aisle 13 and continued my work, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The store felt different, like there was a presence watching me. The humming melody echoed in my mind, and I felt a constant chill. When my shift ended, I told my manager about the girl. He looked at me with a concerned expression. "Are you sure you saw a little girl?" he asked. I nodded, insisting that I had. "That's strange," he said. "We haven't had any children in the store tonight." I didn't know what to say. I was certain of what I had seen, but it seemed impossible. My manager told me to go home and get some rest. I left the store, feeling confused and unsettled. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the girl and the doll. There was something eerie about the whole encounter. I decided to do some research and found out that Walmart had been built on the site of an old orphanage. The orphanage had burned down many years ago, and some of the children had perished in the fire. The next day I went back to work with a sense of dread. I avoided aisle 13 as much as possible, but I couldn't escape the feeling that something was watching me. The humming melody haunted my thoughts, and I felt a constant chill. A few weeks later, I quit my job at Walmart. I couldn't handle the eerie presence any longer. The experience had left me shaken, and I knew I needed to leave before it consumed me. I found another job, far away from Walmart, and tried to move on with my life. But the memory of that night still lingers. Sometimes I hear the haunting melody in my dreams, and I see the girl's pale face staring at me. I don't know if she was a ghost or a figment of my imagination, but one thing is certain: aisle 13 at Walmart is a place I'll never forget. And whenever I pass by a Walmart, I can't help but feel a shiver down my spine. The haunting of aisle 13 is a mystery that will stay with me forever, a reminder that some places hold secrets that are best left undisturbed.